The traditional view of faith, what is going on inside a young person, what do you believe, what are you doing on the weekends, have you had a personal encounter with Jesus? We're not dismissing these things in any way, but we're wanting to change the lens a little to view faith the way they do. So a young person's faith is not just their personal trust in God, it's not just their cognitive assent to a set of beliefs. A young person's faith is also a dynamic web of relationships that includes God, family, peers, mentors, even broader social influences are all part of how they would describe where I'm at, what I reckon, what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing, even from quite young. The spiritual life is interdependent. Experiences, encouragement, faithful action of others directly influence an individual's capacity for trust and belief. Yep, that's the conviction. So we looked at this picture. We're thinking about how is this person growing? What are the factors in their life that we know? You know, strength in faith is possible in a very small child. Amazing insight and wisdom. And even in a family to have a mixture of views from quite young. Yep. So I'm just going to work through an example of the next part of this. Yes, no, you're not putting up your hand, you're working your shoulder. So the second finding breaks down factors internal and external to a person that are part of their ecology. It actually really kind of maps it out and pulls those elements apart, a bit like I was describing with the trees. What's the water, what's the soil, what's the weather, you know, what other trees are around. It does that in a very non-narrative way. Thanks, analytical people. Text in boxes is a problem to me, I'm just saying. But I appreciated them having an external and internal list, and it should be in your folder. So there are internal, what's happening in the faith experience of the young person inside, and there are external, what is happening around the young person, okay? And so the internal and external factors, contrary and, what's the other one? Supportive, excellent. So these would be very familiar terms for many of you, I'm sure. Are those young people growing, narrating, upholding or enforcing that young person's faith, or is it undermining and creating difficulties for them? So we're just going to go, how is the internal and external impacting one another, and how is it changing over time is part of the ecology question. So, my parents are Christian and dedicated me to a Baptist church at birth. I was brought to church for as long as I can remember. I actively engaged in my church's kids group where I was one of the oldest of a generation. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So we've got external supportive factors. In a kids church that I'm enjoying, it's meaningful to me. I actively engaged in the kids group where I was one of the eldest. All right. Next bit of the story. I believed in Christianity in the way of a child, believing that people have been to the moon, simply a fact. As an early teenager, my faith reached a point where I wanted to decide to be a Christian. I had multiple experiences that I related to God. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So these are internal supportive. My relationship with God had experiences. So I mentioned to you that I had an experience of God's presence and love during communion once in the Presbyterian church that I grew up in. Like an overwhelming sense of God's love and presence and gathering around me. So much so that I didn't want the boring waiting to stop, which is not my normal experience of those kind of elements of church. Another time I came to church with new shoes on and said to God, "Do you see my new shoes?" And I definitely got a "yes, I do, they're beautiful" answer from God in church. These are things that I didn't have any language to talk about with anybody else. It was just between me and God, and it was really important. An external factor was a Sunday school teacher with eyes like my nana. You might have noticed that I described she had eyes that could see. She knew anything you've done wrong. Those gimlety, discerning eyes, you young kiddies, what are you up to? She was like that. But whenever she read or told stories about Jesus, her glasses would fog up and she'd tear up. And that struck me so powerfully that Jesus was the thing that softened this woman. Yeah? She used to get her hanky out, hanky not a tissue, and clean the inside of her sunnies and her glasses and then keep going with the story. And that powerfully impacted me. Okay, so the next one is internal contrary. Somehow it petered out as time passed. I simply stopped connecting with it so much. Nothing stood in my way. I just didn't feel like it was affecting me. I was questioning its relevance. So there's nothing on the outside happening, nothing dreadful happening, just... Next. The majority of my friends and classmates at school are not Christian, and so sometimes it feels really confronting to be the only one who believes in God. I feel like an outsider, so that's an external and internal contrary. So the experience of being the only one is the external, and the internalising of that, I feel like maybe I'm strange, maybe I'm wrong. I took ownership. No one else expects this next bit. I took ownership of my faith about a year ago. I went on a youth camp where the theme was identity. I got a better understanding of how I want to live my life for Jesus, and I decided to get baptised in front of my church. External and internal supportive. So that's a wild ride, really, just through one scenario. It's great to read that, to think about that, to know, there's not one thing, there's lots of things. Bless you, Eunice.
So yes, I'm Nick and I'm 2 years into my role. Being newish to this role, I'm still figuring out a lot, and sometimes, a lot of the time, I feel like I'm making it up as I go. Before this, I didn't have a ton of experience working with kids in ministry settings, especially those with complex needs. In the school holidays, the Salvos offer a range of camps for kids. And in Victoria each year, we run a smaller camp for children who either haven't been to a camp before or who come from difficult backgrounds. These camps offer a safe, nurturing space for kids to grow and, more importantly, belong. And then during the Term 3 holidays, which is very too soon, next week, we host our big state kids camp in Victoria. It's a massive event where both kids and youth come to the same campsite at the same time, often experiencing life-changing moments. It's an intense but joyful time, but it's one I'm privileged to be part of. And this year, we've got 123 kids coming, and that's not including the youth that will take up the other half of the campsite. So some of the kids that I've worked with come to camp with unique challenges. They might struggle with transitions, have neurodivergent traits, or have experienced trauma. It's in these spaces that I've had to really slow down and focus on listening to each child, understanding who they are right now, not just as future adults. Some of the kids I work with come in like a tornado. Can we make a tornado noise? Very good. Luckily, the tornadoes didn't reach us in this part of New South Wales. But they come in and they're not camp ready. They're not easily settled. Some are neurodivergent, some have experienced trauma, and some are just big feeling humans in little bodies. And in those moments, there's not a program plan in the world that can compete with what they're feeling. What I've learnt, and I think Natty and Beth have seen this, is the best things that we can offer to children is offer calm. Not because I have all the answers, but because chaos does not need more chaos. It needs peace. Let me tell you about a boy I worked with. We'll call him James. James is on the autism spectrum, and he came to camp with a long list of heads-up notes. He struggles with noise, doesn't transition well, may melt down, will most likely run off. You know, a fun challenge. And day one, he was standing off to the side, hands over ears, not moving. Let's do that. It was the classic, I'm not joining in, don't you dare make me. Now, the old me might have tried to encourage him straight away. Come on, James, it will be fun. Come join in. But I've learnt that pressure never works. So I just sat down, nearby, quiet. I waited. I asked him something that I'd heard he liked, Minecraft. Then boom, that was the key. He didn't jump up and join the group straight away, but eventually we got a smile, a sentence, then a whole conversation about how creepers are the worst and why lava is both terrifying and cool. That little crack in the wall, that's where trust started. And through that relationship with James, it's been a continual journey. And with the help of Tara, he's one of Tara's boys that comes to camp, every 4 to 6 weeks I've been able to FaceTime him after church. And it's a really humbling experience because anytime he sees my face, he gets so happy, he just bursts into tears. And he was helping with their barbecue on the till, and every time he got money, he would say to Tara, "This is one step closer to seeing Nick at camp." And if that's the impact that I can have, making a child excited, wanting to come to camp and being part of God's journey, that is something that's really humbling and special. So here's the thing. Listening isn't about our ears. It's more about posture, about pace, and about presence. I've learned a few practical things that really helped me, especially with kids who are emotionally dysregulated or on the spectrum. Be calm and patient. Take a big deep breath. It may take 5 minutes, it might take 5 days, but every child has their own timeline for trust. Get the info. Parents and local leaders often know the triggers, calming strategies, and quirks that can make or break a moment. Find what lights them up. Find the gold. Everyone shout out Eureka. Eureka! They might like dinosaurs, Pokemon, drawing, fidget toys. If they love it, it's the door into connection. Don't let them run the whole show. Some kids will try and avoid anything and everything. But I try to help them rejoin gently. Let's take a break and then we'll head back in together. The goal isn't to let them escape, but to let them feel safe enough to return. I think of ministry space as kind of like a house. You can decorate it with all the games and crafts and epic snacks, but unless the atmosphere says, "You're safe here," it won't feel like home. Listening, really listening, is what turns a space from a program to a place of belonging. It's in the way we sit beside a crying kid without needing to fix them. Kids don't need to be fixed. Hold boundaries without shame. Ask questions instead of rushing to tell them the solution. Let kids be themselves, even the loud, the silent, the anxious, or the wild. And I think this really matters to Jesus. Jesus never said, "Clean up your emotions, then you can come to me." He said, "Let the children come." He noticed the overlooked. He heard the quiet cries. He didn't flinch at big emotions or brokenness. So if that's who he is, then maybe that's who we're invited to be too. Not perfect, not experts, but gentle, listening companions who walk alongside. And that reminds me of something William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, once said. This is our war cry, the basis of what the Salvation Army stands upon. "While women weep, as they do now, I'll fight. While children go hungry, as they do now, I'll fight. While men go to prison, in and out, as they do now, I'll fight. Where there is a drunkard left, while there is a poor lost girl upon the streets, while there remains one dark soul without the light of God, I'll fight. I'll fight to the very end." This is the fight that I want to be a part of. A fight for listening, for presence, for peace in the chaos, and offering every child a place where they feel seen, known, and loved. Thank you for listening.
Build rich ecosystems of spiritual support. Thank you for demonstrating that so beautifully. A camp of 130, how many? 135? Yep. And from how many churches? Yep. So all over. Dozens of churches. Yep. Means that a whole lot of leaders could actually come and learn some better practice at camp. So don't ever be sending your children on camp without leaders going with and leaders learning with. For example, this is one practice that you think, all right, this is what we need to do, this is how we need to do it. Build rich ecosystems. Not one person. So the bit in the story that I found most heartbreaking was how much he's looking forward to seeing Nick. And Nick is awesome, and looking forward to seeing Nick and therefore wanting to go to camp is gold, but we need more around him than just Nick. Yes? So one silver bullet, one awesome team leader, one awesome program probably won't do it. In fact, won't do it. However, one poorly handled moment, one lacking of something doesn't have to be the end either, because it's an ecosystem. That leader was an absolute tool and said stuff that I'm going to have to spend the next 6 months repairing, but at least I saw it, at least that person shared with me, and we can do that journey together. So poison can be extracted, diluted, dealt with. So there's no simple answer. We're not going to do this reflection. Yes? Yes. That's right. And that is the second narration is struggle, difficulties. Often those difficulties are actually from Christians in their stories, but they don't have to be the end of the story. But we need to be there, we need to know about them, and we need to be mobilising to respond. That's right, that's not the last story. It's good, thanks.